Just make a correction on our agenda that says 3 p.m. and not 4 p.m.
Oh.
Where?
There's an updated one.
Oh, I didn't get the second.
Yeah, sorry, when we canceled the training, we changed that.
I sent it yesterday.
Yeah, she said it.
This one is just their own.
I put it in someone's box and I replaced it on yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Not it,
you
okay.
didn't
got
print
it.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Sean
got a
jacket
on.
So we'll begin tonight with, like we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief Pilgrim, would you lead us in that?
Yeah.
Awesome, love it, thank you. If you didn't remember, city council committee reports are tonight, so we'll look forward to hearing from the three of you and myself on some of the things we're working on, our initiatives, and we'll have a citizen comment period. So we have 2 quarterly reports for tonight, so we'll start with our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Scott Jurgis. He'll report to us for the last quarter financially. And then Chief Pilgrim's on double duty, so we'll have him report again and give us a report, which will be fascinating with all of the things that have happened during July. Anyway, and then tonight we have currently, I say that currently, as you'll understand later, we have 5 items to consider, action items to consider for the council this evening. Starting with item 6.1, consideration of resolution 419, adopting new part 8, Public Health Advisory Committee of chapter 2.140, standing advisory committees, volunteers of the Town of Heights Code of Ordinances. So Mike, you're gonna, you talked about that. I know we've got a bunch of things that we want to kind of discuss, and so we'll stay here for a minute until we get through that, whether or not we keep this on as a voting item tonight.
Yeah, this is an ordinance for your consideration. It was, I think in December of last year, Salt Lake County Health Department came in and made a presentation to the council on what a health coalition is. Gave some background on that. In the council retreat, direction was given to move forward with the creation of a coalition. So we've been working on that. The ordinance in front of you tonight, all it does is establish a public health coalition as an official recognized board or committee of the city. You'll notice in the ordinance, it's pretty broad. And it's written kind of as the other boards and commissions chapters are. What we plan to do after the coalition is codified is come back to you with a recommended membership of the coalition. And that's where we can get into the different frameworks that are used, and the one that we're recommending really inform the membership of the coalition and how they get to work. So we can have a more in-depth conversation on that. I would recommend we do that after we formally create the coalition as a body, but before we appoint the membership. So the vote tonight is only to create it as an official body, and then we'll come back to you. We're planning to do it at the next meeting with recommended membership.
So when you say as an official body, does that include who can be on it?
That only includes how many members it can
Total
contain.
number of members?
Yeah, certain parameters, in like the planning commission chapter of that same ordinance, it says you have to represent the different districts. This is a little more open than that, and it is going to be informed by whatever framework we decide that we can talk about at a future meeting. But it's right now proposing up to 25 members, which is a big group. The idea is you get these up and running with staff involvement, and then over time they kind of become a self-guided, self-directed thing that works with the city, but we're not doing the bulk of the work for it.
Is that 25 a recommendation from the county on what they've done in other municipalities? Is that
Yes.
that's a big
It is,
committee.
it's big, yep. And that is derived from recommending that you have members representing public safety and the schools and, different community areas, religious institutions, business owners. You want to get a good cross-section representation of people in the community and their experience with public health. It isn't narrowly focused at this point on what public health means, so it's pretty broad. It includes
staff.
Staff would be liaisons to it, supporting it as we do other boards and commissions. And then it's recommended to have a council liaison as a non-voting member as well.
So Councilmember Highland.
Great that we're doing this, obviously. I think that as I
first of all, I was just a little bit disheartened that we only had a day and a half to really review it. So that's one reason I'd like to put the brakes on, but I'd like to offer some specifics too. And that's that in the powers and duties section of this particular code, it really talks only about serving the health and development of children and adolescents and the youth. And I think this should be broader than that. We have a population in our city that is mostly seniors. And so when you say it's, maybe not very specific, I would take a little bit of issue with that. And then this should be broader, to include all of those things. So that's one comment about this. The second is on the subcommittee. The subcommittee members only has to be approved by the city manager and is not subject to the advice and consent of the council, which the others are. So I would think that that's another thing that we should change. And last, but I think.
So when you talk about a subcommittee, give me an example. I don't know if subcommittees would normally come to the council, would they? In other
I think the
areas?
Parks, Trails and Open Space has similar language where they've created Bonneville Shoreline Trail and active transportation subcommittees. I don't know off the top of my head if that goes to the council or if it's just a city manager.
It's just, it doesn't go to the
Just
council.
city manager.
So you get an activist who's on a subcommittee. Are you okay with that? Or would you like that to be something for us to consider before we approve this code?
So to consider who's on it.
Yes.
Uh,
I think that that would be another reason for us to postpone the vote, just so we can discuss that as well as this powers and duties. And I also want to point out that we are following, how the other committees are appointed, which in all the other committees, I think that makes sense. But in my brief review of these coalitions, I think that there could be a case made. I mean, a city manager is not expected to be a public health expert. And so if he's the only one, or she is the only person who's interviewing the committee members and then bringing it to the council, might we not consider that maybe that should be a small committee that's interviewing the committee members? So there's just a few things I want to, I'm not saying maybe that's right, but I think it warrants a pause, a 2-week pause to go through this and just say, is this really reflective of what a health coalition should look like?
it's more about.
I don't have specific, I don't necessarily have specific concerns with it, but I'd be supportive of Councilmember Highland if she wants to dig into it a little deeper. I'm fine to postpone and let her give the opportunity to do that.
Any thoughts, Councilmember? No.
No.
Okay, let's, so we will, anything I need to say, Shane, that we want, I will vote on it tonight.
Yeah, I think you just asked for a motion to continue it.
Okay, so if, I'll ask for a motion to continue tonight
Okay.
and get it.
To a date certain to the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay,
And then Mike had a conversation and you said you'd get me some of the technical stuff, which I know you would probably normally spare the councils, that kind of technicality, but I would like to know a little bit more about the different options we have for the coalitions. I did, we had a great conversation about how you typically get what you measure. And so if we primarily focus on what's easy to measure, we might miss out on some of the more subjective things in our community. Like West Valley City does out and abouts, or, a Councilmember Holton and Councilmember Newell have written in recent community or newsletter about how important it is to establish neighborhoods and the activity within neighborhoods. So I would like this to just be a little bit broader. And then I think this 100% slam dunk, it's gotta be done.
Would the council like to then postpone the membership recommendations to the next meeting? Just shift everything back, or do you want to do that all in one meeting?
I don't know if we need to go staggered.
Staggered? Okay, so we'll push them both back. Okay. Okay.
Just by one council meeting.
Yeah.
Commit to getting through that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's input. Item 6.2 for tonight, consideration of resolution 2024-50, appointing a city manager and approving an employment agreement. So, Scott, anything specific you want to add to that?
No, not really.
He's probably ready for the manager to come.
I need some help, so this would be great. But, it'd be great to have him here and everything, but it's just, setting out the contract that outlines his employment with the city. And, he happens to be here tonight, so, there you go. That's about all I got.
I guess we'll do that in the business meeting, but Jared, you want to stand up and? Jared, sure, thanks. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
He's honest.
We'll move on. Item 6.3 for tonight's consideration of resolution 2024-51. Approving entry into the fourth amendment to an independent contractor agreement with Greg Curtis, DBA Curtis Consulting. So Scott, I'm gonna have you talk about that real quick.
Okay, and if it's okay, I'll just kind of loop in with the next one as well. So we have two lobbyists that work for us. There is Brian Allen and of course his daughter, which her name is right there.
Chantel.
Chantel, yep, Chantel. And they work with us through a couple different names of their entity, Aviva and Capitol Hill Advisors. And then there's also Greg Curtis. Both of them serve different purposes a little bit in terms of what they do with us. This will be extensions of both of their contracts. Both of them are asking for $36,000 a year to do their work. Over the years, it's fluctuated both up and down as we asked for them for some, some breaks in the amounts when things were a little tighter, a few years ago and everything. Just getting back up to kind of where they were at that point in time. So that's what this is.
Questions, comments? No. Okay. Thank you. That will cover item 6.3 and 6.4, resolution 2024-51 and 2024-52. Item 6.5, consideration of resolution 2024-53, approving and ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for the Supernal Way Storm Drain Improvement Project. Matt.
Council and Mayor, this is one of those projects we brought in the past. It's somewhat of we call it an emergency project at the time, but we got it started. This is the pipe that goes down into a neighbor's yard down behind their house, and it's caused considerable damage. So we bid the project and we received great bids actually on this. We were very surprised and pleasantly surprised by the numbers. So that's what this is, approving that, and we'll move forward as soon as that's completed, as soon as y'all sign it.
That means maybe we're moving back into a more rational world, Matt?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Some of the bids were out there wild, but the bottom ones were very nice, to be honest with you. So I think it's settled down quite a bit, that's for sure. I don't know if anybody's going backwards, but at least they're not going forward at this point.
Great, thank you. Questions from the council? Aye. Okay, and then we'll approve our consent calendar. We're gonna move right into some staff reports. Anyway, I won't get into the reasons why, but we'll move first into item 3A, which is a general obligation bond, public outreach at Butlerville Days discussion. So as you all know, we've discussed multiple times about adopting a geo bond, a general obligation bond that would go onto the ballot in November. And our introduction really to the public at Butlerville Days about this. And so Mike, you have, I think, a schedule, and I'll let you
Yeah, thanks, Mayor.
handle it from here.
Share this, and this can be pretty brief because this only takes us to Butlerville Days. But I just wanted to make the council aware of what's been going on in terms of the public education side of the general obligation bond. We are really planning on Butlerville Days being the big public introduction of this bond initiative, and having materials ready to get feedback and engage with members of the public that are in attendance at that meeting. So leading from now until then, we've been refining our messaging on communicating the benefits of the bond and educating, providing education points on what the bond is and what it does, and the impacts of voting for it, and what happens if it doesn't pass, and all these things that you want in a bond campaign. We will have a 10 by 20 tent at Butlerville Days located right near the information tent, just across the walkway, so kind of prime location as people are walking in. This will be one of the first tents that everyone sees on their left. This will be staffed by members of the Town Center Advisory Committee and also members of the project team. We'll be there with plans that were shown to the council, with some site renderings that are being finalized right now, and then brochures and handouts that have some information. That will link back to the project website, which will be updated by Butlerville Days to include a deeper dive on all of this information, so people can spend time reading through that. But the idea of Butlerville Days is to draw people in, educate them quickly on the project, but not keep them in the tent too long, and they can be on their way. In addition, let's see, high quality renderings should be ready later this week or early next week. We've been refining the bond messaging. We had a focus group meeting, so thank you to each of the council members for recommending residents to participate in that. We thought that was very helpful in learning, what things are helpful to communicate and what things are confusing. And I think that will be reflected in our documents.
At a very high level, what did you get out of that meeting?
Be very straightforward about the city's intent, communicate the details of the project as they are and why the city is interested in going this direction, and show images of what the benefit looks like.
Once the images were shown, the entire, and I wasn't there, but I've been told the entire mood or reaction changed to positive.
Pictures worth 1,000 words?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And then, at Butlerville Days and before then, we'll have updated project website, social media updates that will go out, inviting people to stop by the tent and learn more. And then we're preparing the mayor's preparing a newsletter article for the August city newsletter. And then again, as we talked about, we're planning summer events at the Hillside Plaza site, town hall meetings here to provide public information, and developing what the consulting team calls a meeting in a box tool, where we can hand these meeting materials out, and then council members and committee members and residents can go out and kind of help educate others on the project and help get the word out that way. And then
Vision of town hall, and we talk about meeting in a box, is
there will,
town hall?
that is separate from, that's if a council wants to hold a district meeting or a council member wants to hold a district meeting, but we will also plan on probably sometime before the August 20th date where the council has to vote on a bond resolution, holding an informational town hall meeting where we advertise that citywide. So this is just kind of next steps, but Butlerville Days is what we're planning on, kind of the big public push on this effort. And then the idea is, people won't be able to go somewhere without hearing about this from Butlerville Days till.
So Wilkinson Ferrari is the public engagement specialist, and they are working furiously to create education materials and all of the things that we're going to have in the booth in Butlerville Days.
Is there any benefit to having any of us at the booth at times?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So we plan to in conjunction with the advisory committee, have a certain number of people there at all times, from 4 to 10 basically.
Yeah, so Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 3 or 4 till the event ends or till fireworks on Saturday. We'll have a handful of people in that booth to engage with people and kind of answer questions.
I mean, I could guess, but could we get some information to the council about when your expected peak hours are, and maybe that's when we can be in the booth?
Yeah, really, it's going to be Friday evening and Saturday after the kind of hottest part of the day. I think some of the event, and Ann is probably here to
When the food trucks are there?
correct.
Well, so
but-
I've manned booths before, and Thursdays have been slower.
So Friday
But
evening.
Fridays and Saturdays are both. Saturday later,
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, the later in the day, Saturday will be the highest traffic part of the day. But this is also, the food trucks are right next to this, so people getting food will walk by this tent as well. So we think there's going to be a lot of foot traffic
The
there.
way that we're positioned, it'll be hard to miss for people coming. They'll see it as soon as they walk in.
I do appreciate Ann Etchell working with this kind of later curveball, understanding how long is planned to get us this space kind of last minute. So I think that'll help a ton.
100% agree.
Thank you. Sounds great.
Any other questions on this?
Questions? Did we lose that Councilmember Hunter? What happened?
running out and about in the
Put a
neighborhood.
bell on him or? Okay.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Okay, item 3B is a discussion on electric vehicle chargers at City Hall. As you all know, we currently
sense. But these folks made an agreement that they came back with a proposal on a way that they could upgrade the chargers, better experience, better charging. But also there was the capability of folks that come here that they're able to pay for that charge. And it wouldn't cost the city anything. And that, of course, if someone comes back with that proposal, I say to staff, I think that's worthy of looking into and having that discussion of, all right, it's a $0 budgetary item. Now let's have the discussion of, we're grateful that we have this service at City Hall. Should we charge or not for it? I'm definitely in the camp of, I think we should. I think that if folks can get a charge in their car, I don't think it's necessarily completely fair for all residents just to subsidize that for them. That being said, I know that it hasn't been a huge cost to the city, but just for me, from just a straight principle perspective, I think it's a service that's here. If you'd like to come in and use it, put your card down, pay for the charge just like anywhere else that you go. So that's kind of it. It's pretty simple, straightforward. That's the crux of it all.
Yeah, I have a couple of concerns.
Yeah.
We become a commercial entity at that time. As a city. How legally can we step into that framework? Shane?
How quickly can we step into what framework?
Into
Implications.
Becoming a commercial entity.
Offering
Offering to them to pay for electrical charging here.
Yeah.
At City Hall. Because we become
Well,
a business.
It seems to me that if it's simply a pass through, why it's probably okay, but I can certainly look at that. If we're not imposing a surcharge or something like
Well,
that.
the way the estimate we got from this company that Councilmember Holton got us in touch with, recommended modeling this as they replace the infrastructure at no upfront cost to the
To
city.
us, yeah. Mhm.
The new charges would require payment before it will output electrical energy. And then what they've proposed, and this would be up to the council down the road in a contract, is that they would collect 100% of the revenue from that until the installation cost was paid off. And then there'd be some sort of split in revenues over time between the city and the installer after that.
Well, we'll have to look at that.
Part two for
Hmm.
me is, if we open this can of worms, how can we tell other entities no that they cannot become partners with the city in a commercial aspect?
Yeah, I understand that, but I think it's specific that we have electrical charging units currently here at City Hall. You know, so I mean,
Well, right now, we're not charging anything and people.
so we're offering
Yeah.
energy for free.
Mhm.
I mean, should we put some gas pumps in coming out for
Well,
gas for
we're
free?
offering, well, no, I'm just saying, I'm being the devil advocate
Yeah,
right here.
we need it.
Yeah, if we're actually gonna have to pay back or allow them to receive the revenue, they're now in business on City Hall property. So how are we gonna tell someone that wants to have a taco on in the parking lot that they can't do
Knickerbocker's
this?
Deli, can we come
Yeah.
set up? Yeah.
Yeah, how can we tell them no at that
Sure.
point in time?
Reasonable.
I think that's a fair question. I do think that that's a case by case. I do think this is a little different because this is more of a function of utility and energy at City Hall. I think that the decision was made long ago when they put electric charging stations at City Hall to be in the business of providing energy to vehicles. So that decision was already made. I think, you know, we've got Butlerville days where people are turning a profit, selling hot dogs and other things. There are cities functions that currently do take place where that does happen. If there's a specific process that we have to follow to go through an RFP process or other things to make sure that we're doing it in a sound way, I think that's great, and we should follow whatever rules and regulations that we should. I think I'm just trying to be creative on ways of, all right, yeah, I think it's good. I think it is a good thing to have electric chargers at City Hall. I think it is a good thing for us to provide that resource as the changes in technology are taking place. And I think for me, if we can change the structure on rev share, not rev share, you know, is it reduced price? I think all those details can be figured out. I think just from, in my mind, the principle of, should we be providing free energy fuel to vehicles just based on A, who gets there first, B, if you have an EV charger versus a gas car. I just don't think that giving it out for free is a sound practice.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about all the other intricacies that come into it. So, for example, we have a voting box out there. If I
Yeah.
want to set up my barbecue business and just have a drive-through right through there, why can't I do that when we're and pay the city a charge,
Sure.
you know, for that piece of property?
Well, I think that you could propose it, but I think the council would say no. So, and I think that that's what we would just have.
We have to be concerned.
We would-
have to be concerned with equity within,
Yeah,
you know, commerce. And
you shall, sorry, Councilman Newell. No, you too long to call you Councilman. You're not wrong. I'm definitely just trying to look at an existing thing that we have and trying to
Oh, I
put a
understand.
better
I
practice in
understand what you're
place.
saying. I just don't want us to get into trouble down the line.
Would your preference be to remove it if we don't go this way?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I do not want the city to run into an issue
Yeah.
with other entities, commercial entities saying, wait a minute, you didn't do this, you won't do this for us?
I think that
And there's creativity out there where somebody can come up with something.
no question, I've got some ideas.
Shane, is
Yeah.
this something you'd be worried about?
No, I think that there's always an issue with government treating people equally. I think you're right. The decision was made long ago that for environmental reasons, it was a good idea to support this emerging technology and basically reward those people who are willing to invest in it through this type of vehicle. I think that if we were to do something like this on this one thing, I think we would need to open up the whole process to any competitors of
Yes,
this
I agree.
outfit to do, who may want to do this sort of thing. As far as opening the city hall property up to all sorts of, different business pursuits. I don't view that as a big risk, but certainly we will take a look at that and see if we think there's, any sort of exposure to the city.
So I don't know, sorry,
Go ahead.
I don't know if there's a decision that we're trying to make today. I think, is it more
We're just
Getting-
talking about it.
getting some approval from the council to say, let's continue down this road and figure out what, if it is an RFP or whatever the process looks like, the best way to frame it. I would be supportive of that. And see what we can come up with and see if it doesn't it's not a slippery slope issue.
Councilmember Highland, anything?
I think that Shane said it most accurately. There's, you do certain things to provide incentives for certain behaviors. And at this point where it's shifting from, there's already an established technology. Now we probably shouldn't be subsidizing that anymore. And so I agree with the principle of, and you brought up some really great points. Doing this. Because I assume it's gonna show up on their app as a place anybody can come to at any time. So it's almost like advertised for them to come to City Hall and charge their vehicle.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have an app or anything like that.
But I think,
They
I think
have-
But they might. I mean, to be honest, I have not gone down
Okay, so we haven't gone down
that
the rabbit
path.
hole.
I
with the details.
believe that it's less about, I believe their business model is not like Tesla. It's more of are there municipalities and folks that want. They're a manufacturer of, and but that's something that we should look into for sure. Yeah.
I guess I would, if you're in contact with them, I'd probably suggest that you ask, tell us who's doing this. Tell us what other cities in Utah are doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm just, I'm struggling a bit with the revenue share thing going forward perpetually without having an opportunity for a redo as conditions change.
I'm sure whatever agreement we'd want to make, we can obviously offer that and say, this is gonna be readdressed at X date, or whatever protections we want to put in place for the city. I think the only reason why we're going down this path is because I told them we're not spending money on it. So come up with a way that we can move forward and do something to I think, correct this without the city having to fork over a lot of money, or frankly, any money.
An innovative idea.
So it's worth asking for. Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep
Can we,
moving down the
and then
road.
maybe you can just report back to us and.
Yeah, it probably is gonna involve a procurement process of some sort. Is this the go ahead to start working on that?
And I guess another question I would have is if the decision is that the city shouldn't be giving free electrical charges to electric vehicles anymore, why that's certainly a policy decision the council can make. Perhaps something to look at there is our current equipment, can it be retrofitted so that it can be charged? Do we need to partner up with somebody to do this sort of thing? But what's the most efficient way to do it?
I think I can answer that. I think you can too. We did have folks look into this. There's no internet connectivity of any kind. You could maybe retrofit, but there'd be a substantial cost. And the thought is, if you're going to have a substantial cost of where you're adding internet connectivity where you can charge a credit card or whatever, at that point, is there enough of a burden that's taking place that you probably should upgrade the chargers to a point where it's a legitimate updated charger where people would actually want to pay for it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, they would need to be upgraded. Right now, they can be locked, but they can't be retrofitted to require payment.
So it's like a 15-minute charge? I mean, what are we talking about?
No, in the estimate we got, they're level 2 chargers. And the ones we have today are level 2 chargers. Presumably, though, these are newer level 2 chargers that would be more efficient, but they're not gonna be a drastic upgrade where you can, fill up your entire car and.
I think it's like an app, if someone's here for like 45 minutes or something, you probably could get a full one. I think the reason why you have people that are parking overnight is because that's what it's taking. It is hours.
People are parking overnight using
Yeah.
the church.
Oh, big
Cars show up on weekends and nights.
I've done, I don't live far, so I've come by and I'll take photos of, I'm not taking license plates, okay? But just to show like weekends, nights, even during the day, there's no one here that's having a meeting that's 7 hours long. But it is being abused right now. There's no question about it.
Probably by a few.
Yeah, probably,
It is.
probably. They've got a routine going and they'll even get to the point where they'll get dropped off and then their spouse or someone comes and picks them up and takes them home. And then they'll come back the next morning, get dropped off and then go to work.
That's part of my problem.
Okay.
If there was a 45-minute or hour charge and residents, Conwood Heights residents could do that, I wouldn't have much problem with that at all. But to have folks that can just come from any and everywhere, that's another concern of mine too.
And it's even happening during
Especially
business
supplementing
hours.
it. Paying
Yeah.
for it's a different issue to me.
So I've come in the morning, had a meeting here. White Tesla's being charged there. On my way home, I just want to drive back. Same car still sitting there, 8 hours later. And that's why I got to the point of like, okay, this is kind of a little ridiculous.
I guess going back to what the mayor's, the question the mayor asked, Councilmember Newell, whether we just want to yank these things out, I guess to me, that's a function of whether the infrastructure is being developed at a rate that people have other options. When this was put in, the infrastructure was not there, but I assume that it's been progressing along and so maybe something to look at.
Yep, good thoughts. Okay,
That's all I got.
thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on. Item C, the hardest working person in our city right now is Ann Etchell, and we unbelievably appreciate her and all that she is doing. And so anyway, she's here to give us a Butler Grove Days update. I cannot believe that is next week. You guys know that, right? Next week. So Ann, tell us, the floor is yours.
Okay, so setup will start next week, like you just said, but it's a little confusing because Wednesday is the 24th. So you're gonna start seeing, the carnival will slowly roll in, starting Tuesday and then more Wednesday night. And then some fencing will go up on, Tuesday, and then more tents will go up on Wednesday, and then some more things on Thursday. So it's kind of a split out. You're gonna see a little bit as it grows this year instead of all at one time. Mayor's Cup should have started today. I think.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And it's very popular. I've tried to sign up, but I am late every darn year, but it fills up quick.
Yeah, yeah. So, we have, 17 food vendors coming. We're excited for the, every year, we get over probably 40 to, food vendors during the short time it's opened. And then committee members sit and go through it and decide, a mixture of food and try new things and stuff. Car show, will be here, again. I've heard rumors that it's really, spreading on social media, so I'm hoping for a really good car show.
Like last year, we changed the time to Friday evening.
It's still Friday evening, and I still need you to pick your award by 7 PM.
Okay,
So, and you'll just tell the car show company that cranked it up there, who you chose, just like
Okay.
last year.
perfect.
And then Saturday morning is the parade, 9 AM. So it's a little different. That means I'm supposed to be up there at 6 AM or sooner. So I forgot it affects me too. Darn it.
Well, I'm really interested, and I don't know how we'll gauge, but I'd really like to see if the community comes out more because it won't be as hot.
Hot. Right now, our parade numbers, attending is a little lower than last year, but I'm kind of okay with it because I have a new parade chair. And she's just kind of getting her feet wet and we're kind of going over things. And so I think
You're talking the number of entries. and
entries,
flows and
yeah,
stuff. Okay.
yeah. So
What
we've
are
got
we at?
about 50 right now.
50.
I always say 50 is a good parade.
Okay.
If I hit 50, but the last week we always get a few more. And she's gonna start reaching out to some of the ones from last year that haven't applied, and we'll end up with a few more, I know, so I'm not too worried.
Great.
I need to make sure that you have A car, I heard maybe you are
He's got
set.
a Honda Civic that I'm
on this-
gonna donate.
It is, yeah,
That's so
transformed
kind
into
of
a
you.
convertible.
Yeah.
With Councilmember Burrell not being here, I'm gonna ride a bike. No, I'm not. I am going, well, we've got something figured out, a car.
Okay, because the gentleman you were with in last year was interested if you needed him again, but if you're not using him, I miss.
I was really worried his car was gonna keep stalling and we were gonna be stuck. We're probably gonna do something different.
Miss Utah, is a Cottonwood Heights, resident, and she was also in the YCC.
Wow,
Yeah, so, she is, wanting to come to the parade and needs those, so I can put, maybe check with him, see if he
Yeah.
wants to give her
yeah, that,
a ride. Yeah, so that's kind of kind of cool news for everybody.
yeah.
Um,
Can you tell us what time you want us there? And-
8:30 up at Smith's, yeah.
We have rides for us, go up like you did last year.
So either with you guys are on the float.
Yeah.
Or you're walking and tossing candy. So, and if you want to get on and off the float, that's great.
No, I mean, we parked down.
Oh,
last time.
just so we can
got
get
it.
If you want, yeah, if you want to be down here, then I will work out with, Public Works, what time, to be down here for a ride up. I'll work that out and get that plan to all of you. So I would say no later than 8, just so we can get you up there. 8 AM at the, information booth. If you no later than that, then we'll gather you all up and take you up. That's good. Okay.
I'll probably have my husband just drop me off.
If you park up there, if you do park up at Smith's, I will make sure they take you back up. So either way. So if you park down here, that's fine. But if you park up there, we'll make sure
So you said the information booth at.
at the Butler Park, you can wait there. Or if you park at Smith's, I mean, police will give you a ride back up or Public Works will give you a ride back up. So either way you want, just let us know. And then we'll make sure you get there.
I'll be a Smith's at 8:30.
We'll pick you up at a plow
Too
truck.
early.
I will.
Mark could be the chauffeur. He doesn't
Uh,
want anything to do with the parade, but he'll chauffeur us around.
And then Saturday night, everybody just needs to be at the stage, by 8 PM for 8:15 remarks.
Oh, wait, we're expected to say something, or is that you?
Just the mayor.
The mayor.
We sit there and smile and that's why they're
You
clapping.
never know if I'll pass it off one year, so.
Saturday,
Be
8 PM
prepared.
where? At
By
the
the
stage?
by the stage, 8 PM by the stage.
Okay. Well, that, it's amazing the amount of work that goes into this, celebration that we have for our city, and thank you, Ann, for all you do, and I know you're looking forward to, you know, a week and a half flying by and being over, maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
but, we appreciate all that you do, and thank you. So
I do
let us-
want to report that, this year we did bring up the sponsorships to 19,000. Last year they were at 16. So I was, even though it was a hard year, we was able to pull a few more dollars in at the last minute. So
Correct.
I just.
I know last year we almost covered the entire drone show, right? Did we do that again or no?
No, because the drone show doubled in cost. A lot of things doubled in cost this year with the inflation stuff, so I was really trying to bring in,
Drones have employment rights too.
well, they gave us the discount the year before.
Okay.
And so that's why it went out to its normal cost this
Got
year.
it.
And chief, thanks to your folks, I know you have a ton of officers that spend a lot of time up there, so.
And they're gonna spend longer this year, so
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Ann.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to item D under staff reports, and I added this late just as a discussion item between us. And it's labeled city manager priority. So we know that we're planning on passing a resolution later tonight to a new contract with the new city manager. And so one of the things that I thought that maybe we could do as a council is talk about some of the things that we feel that we really want Jared Stigerver to concentrate on, or to at least put a lot of emphasis in early on in the process. So I planned this as just an open discussion. I have my thoughts, but maybe we go around the room and mention something, we can discuss it a little bit further. We don't have a lot of time, 10 minutes to talk about it, but so.
Why don't you start then? Because then we won't be.
Well, sure. You know, believe it or not, he's not hired, but we actually invited him into a meeting today that had to deal with, the Hillside Plaza. So the redevelopment. So to me, that's gonna be the drinking from a fire hose that getting this geo bond, out to the public in a timely manner and being organized and doing everything that we need to make sure that we're telling this the best way we can possible to the public. Letting them know what we're doing and that they have the opportunity to say yes or no. And so that, to me, that's item number one that I really want him to wrap his head around. Every deadline, everything that we have to do, I want to make that number one. Any thoughts about that?
So the highest priority to start.
So are we coming up with these formally right now? Or have a discussion and submit some things to you at a later date? What are your,
This is not official at all, just a discussion. So you can submit whatever we want, and then if, and it doesn't even need to be prioritized. It's more things that we want him to understand from day one, August 5th, when he starts, that we really want him to spend some time on. Cause he'll be drinking from a fire hose. If you think about all of his tasks and, and managing an entire city staff.
Yeah.
In the middle of a geo bond
In the
process.
middle of a geo bond, yeah. Exactly.
well, I mean, I'll just come with a couple of things. I think I'd love for us, I know that we all as folks on the council came up with some priorities that we wanted to see through this year. I'd love to sit down with him and kind of get a refresher on what those priorities are and put some processes in place on actually mapping these things out. I think one thing in my year and a half on the council is I'd love a little more concrete structure in place on if this is something that myself and my colleagues have agreed and said, hey, I'll support you in this. I'd love to have a roadmap on what that looks like. And some of these projects, he may go to Matt Ship and Matt says, that's cute, Mr. Holton, but that's going to take 3 years. That's not a reasonable in the next 8 months kind of a project, especially when it comes to infrastructure projects. But at least having some expectations on what these priorities are going to look like. Because I do feel like we came up with them and they have a little bit kind of fall to the wayside. I heard that, Matt.
Oh.
Fall to the wayside. So I'd love that. It's just really, it's processes and structure and just having some expectations in place. And this is less of a expectation and more of an encouragement, which I'm sure he will do, but just to spend a ton of time with the folks in our city. We've got some great employees and we've got a bunch of different, if that's public works and their new building, they're not here at City Hall or the police department or other folks, just to make sure that we're spending time with all those folks, making sure that they all have worth and value and finding the folks that are working great for the city or folks that may not, and creating good culture for folks here. So that's all I got.
Kevin?
I'm sure I'll email some more specifics later, but.
A few things.
Okay.
I would really like to see our city reflect being a customer-centric service organization that's responsive to and reflective of the needs of its citizens. And some examples of that would be, removing the friction points for citizens to do certain things with our city. Mike Johnson had mentioned before that you did this with the permitting process, right? It used to be triplicate, you did it, and now it can be a digital process. And think about what that looks like for our pet registration. We're supposed to register our pets, but you have to come to City Hall. Are you kidding me? Nobody's going to come to City Hall. So I just kind of looking again at all of these, that every time we interact with our citizens, are they going away going, man, this is the best city. I'm so glad I live here. So there's a sense of pride in our hometown. And we're doing that with our town hall. It's exactly what we're trying to do, is placemaking and making it up, where we shout from the rooftops. We love living in Cottonwood Heights, and they could list off, a number of reasons that they love living in Cottonwood Heights. I would like to see a little bit more work on our code enforcement. I think I'd give us about a C grade in this area. Dan Mills said that he could drive down any street in the city and see multiple violations. And I'm not suggesting that we police everything. I'm just suggesting that maybe we'd be a little bit more aware of some of the things that are egregious in our city and kind of step that up a little bit and focus on the nuisances instead of the uses.
Can I add one to that customer service aspect?
Yeah.
Just reaching out to all these community groups. There are a lot of community groups that are out there and they all have different issues that they focus on. But I think giving them the opportunity or encouragement to sit down face to face with all of these groups to really understand what's going on the ground will be massively important. We already have committees, but there are groups outside of those committees that form. We've got a lot of those people here today. So.
Chief, could I ask you, are we proactive with ordinance or do we wait for phone calls? Is that in the
Code enforcement.
Yeah, code enforcement, sorry.
Both. We handle both, but, keep in mind, there are
Two of them, yeah.
yeah.
I know, and I want, and in their defense, or I say, every time that I've really had a chance to talk with them, they're doing so much animal control that it seems like there's little time for code enforcement or not as much. Maybe because of the pandemic, we're now 85% of households have animals. And so I don't know if that's a resource problem or if, like you said, if it's just something that we don't do proactively, we only do reactively.
Well, and part of it is, if I can add, Chief, just experiences in District 1. There are some parts of the city that aren't just natural places that you're gonna stumble across. Next to Chris Lane, there's a small little half lane. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's very strange. But there was a trailer at someone's house and there was an extension cord going from inside someone's house to the trailer. And there was just a large group of people living in this limited space. And it's hard to know until neighbors just notice and give folks a heads up. And I think neighbors do feel bad. They don't want to be a tattler on their neighbors, but there are some things that the city needs to know about. It's just unsafe, frankly, and code enforcement got rid of a old mobile home that was in this alleyway that was boarded up and infested with rats, and people were taking the boards down and having parties inside. So I was not invited.
What? You're invited to everything.
I was not
You're
invited to
the
this
party
party.
person.
No, but they would never, my point is they wouldn't stumble upon something like this because it's in this back alleyway that folks need to speak up.
And they do, they're very responsive to.
Yeah, they're very
residents
responsive.
when Residents say, hey, there's an issue here. And with two of them, we're gonna have to count on that for.
Oh, yeah.
Most of those types of increments.
One of the things that we've talked about is a wages and comp study that I think is gonna be a priority to probably start sooner than later.
Yeah.
And so we'll put that as a, high priority agenda item.
I want to echo what Councilmember Holton said, and that's that we establish some processes to continually ensure that our actions align with our priorities and intentions. And that might, when we got, Tim's report on what had been done on the retreat, we hadn't seen anything in 6 months. And so just a process of maybe a quarterly update to the council on the priorities that we set in the retreat would be a very, I don't want to make it a burdensome step, but it would really help us understand how things are moving forward.
To go along with that, I think there are some cities that actually have something on their website that updated priorities and how they're doing on that, which leads me into, I really think it's good to have a fresh look at our website.
I agree. I have that so that we periodically review the engagement we see from our communications with citizens. The website and all communications should be promoted to increase citizen awareness and engagement. And, right now, there's so many different avenues for people to receive communication, but what people don't know, they make up. And so the more information we can give them, and when we get a call and say, hey, have you been to the website to see what we're doing? Then that just, then I don't have to spend 2 hours putting an email together to update one citizen. It's actually on the website. So I agree with that priority.
And I like that because we talked about this a year or two ago about pushing information out.
Yeah.
And not waiting for folks to have to come in, but we have to receive those emails and to be able to have that contact information. Also looking at communication, I think it's important to get communication about critical issues that are going on in the city. So that we're all aware of it, so that when we get questions, we at least have a battery of answers that we can come up with, or the ability to redirect residents when they have some issues.
A good example that was Public Works putting on their page what was happening in the city. That was so easy to just say to constituent, go to Public Works, you'll see exactly what's going on. You'll see exactly when your street is going to be, up for removal and improvement. So thank you. I think that's really good.
And we can do that in social media. I do that all the time, talking
Yeah, you're
about
good.
construction and, things that are gonna happen.
Yeah.
So you take on some of that burden, as long as we know, right?
Yeah.
We can share.
Okay, well, that's actually, I think, good, and I think I even saw Jared furiously writing notes.
So we don't have to.
I don't think anything's on the paper, but the pen was moving.
Okay, thank you all. The last item under staff reports, and then we'll move to some presentations that we have, is an annexation discussion, and Councilmember Highland has been working hard with a group of citizens down off of Creek Road and has got more information, so we thought we'd add this to an item and discuss some of the things that she's found out. So I'm gonna actually just, did Mike, did you want to bring anything as well? Councilmember Highland, okay.
Okay, so thank you for this. Yes, we have started the process and we were able to start with step one, which was a notice of intent that has to be signed by up to 5 citizens in an area. That was submitted to the city and then subsequently to the county. And when I went to the county, there were certain questions that came up that now lead me to question whether we're going down the right path, to be able to get this done. So I need the council's advice on this. The first was actually Brad Park, who was the deputy county surveyor, questioned, why aren't we making this a city-sponsored annexation instead of doing this on a petition drive? And that's actually a reasonable question. Now, I didn't even know that that was an option. I think I presumed, but I know Sandy City has agreed that these are some areas that would be okay for us to take. And so what I've been pounding the drum on is that, remember, Sandy gets a gift. The citizens have to do nothing and they get annexed into Sandy automatically in July of 2027. And all of a sudden, all that tax revenue goes to Sandy City. And one of the reasons I led this annexation drive is because I live on Creek Road. And when we have a road that's split between multiple municipalities, which right now is unincorporated Salt Lake County and Cottonwood Heights and Sandy, it's very difficult to coordinate improvements. And I think there are some improvements, and that's what the citizens on the south side want as well. So that's the first question is, should we be looking at this as a city-sponsored annexation? Because then the city can pay all of the costs associated with it. And then my understanding is it then just becomes a vote rather than petition led. And let me tell you what's driving that. There's a second issue, and that's that Scott Baird, who's the public works director at the county, called me yesterday and said, Houston, we have a problem. And that is that in state code, the area that we're talking about should be contiguous. Now it's contiguous to the city, both of those areas, but they're not contiguous to one another. And so now we're talking about having to do 2 annexation petitions. And I'm really confident that the area that's west of Willow Creek, 100%, we could get buy-in, we can get the signatures for them to join the city. I'm not as confident on the east side because I don't know those people as well, but splitting this, Scott Baird said you can proceed as is with a notice of intent with these 2 different areas, but just know that there's a risk that someone might come back and challenge this because the areas are not contiguous. So Shane answered some of my questions. I don't need to go into whether or not I can actually be one of the signers on the notice. I don't think that now that he's explained that probably shouldn't be. I do think that these citizens have a little bit of handholding. They're not going to do this on their own without some kind of a process where we remove the friction.
Shane,
So,
do you have thoughts on the citywide?
I replied on this today.
Oh, okay.
The city, the suggestion that one of the county employees made was simply use an annexation policy plan. Annexation policy plans are only usable in 2nd through 6th class counties, not in Salt Lake County, which is a 1st class county. So I
why
don't,
would they tell me that then? It's not Salt Lake County. Why would they tell me that that was an option?
know.
Because they think it is, but it's not, yeah.
You'll get more of that.
Yeah, yeah, don't be surprised.
So I don't know that there's really a way to avoid the petitioning process or an annexation. Like I said, the annexation policy plan is in a specific section of the code. I think it's 401.5 And it's not usable in a first-class county like Salt Lake County.
What about the contiguous aspect of having to do
Contiguous is a
two?
problem.
It is a problem.
You
didn't,
can't create
I
peninsulas
didn't,
and other things.
So we
I
would
said in my
have to have
memo,
two
I said in my memo, gee, I'm sorry, I've never seen a picture of this. I didn't know that we were talking about non-contiguous areas and trying to cover them all in one process. That in my mind is very risky.
Suzanne, they don't touch anywhere.
No, because
Backyards,
I'm
nothing?
gonna throw Sandy City a little bit under the bus for doing this. They annexed all of Willow Creek Drive, so it's interrupted just by the street. That's it. And so that's a little frustrating, but
When they got the country club.
yeah.
No.
And so that
I
was
wonder
their,
who the
that was
mayor was
Brad
at that
what
time.
Park
No, just
sign,
kidding.
well,
I
actually,
just go get 'em.
Scott Baird this morning said Sandy was really aggressive and, annexing all these areas, again, why isn't this a city led? And so I'm surprised that his county attorney would suggest it could be.
Some ways it's gonna come down to whether they have a protest or not, and I guess that if it's just a roadway that's separating them, in some cases, property lines go to the center of the roadway, so there may have been some contiguity, I don't know, but
I mean, it still could happen, but the point is it could come under scrutiny under a protest. And I believe the LG's office has to give their final stamp of approval on annexations, and they could hypothetically look at it and say, this is not allowed.
it's, in my view, it's best to avoid that issue.
So HB 330, as well intentioned, I guess, as it was really about, I think, more about the Granite community than of these other islands, and maybe even about the service districts has kind of thrown a wrench into things. The Scott Baird, and I know we want to do things so that we don't get ourselves in any trouble, but Scott said, and his county attorney said, I don't care who the check comes from. Just, you got to pay for the required notice. And he said also that they will send out, not just like it's 200 homes, they'll send out 400 notices because they send it to the residents as well as to the tax record. So even if it's the same person, they don't match it up. So our costs go up.
Mhm.
So I'm a little bit frustrated that there's so many roadblocks for the citizens to join our city when there's not the roadblocks for them to join. And so I'd like to know how to approach this.
So I'm not saying that this would happen, but in that law, in that bill, it said that it will go to the more populated city automatically unless, there was one, unless both municipalities agree. So there's technically maybe, but this is, years down the road and getting commitments now that who knows. But there is a potential way we'd have to look into of avoiding some of this cost and headache is that the residents have shown their will, and both Sandy and Cottonwood Heights understand what that will is. And we, I believe via resolution, both municipalities passed that resolution agreeing to, yes, it doesn't need to go to the more populated city. It can go to the lesser populated city, which would be Cottonwood Heights. That is the one caveat that they put in place where it's not an automatic.
With the majority vote?
Well, from my understanding, Representative Tusher, who passed this bill, said the only way that it would not automatically go to the more populous city is if both municipalities agreed. And is that via just we pass a resolution, they pass a resolution, we understand that this is the area, we understand what the will is. In 3 years, when it's automatic, it's not going to Sandy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Shane, how does that work under the annexation policy plan? Because in the code.
It's completely.
1.5, which has been changed.
It's completely different. This was a unique scenario where they put an artificial trigger in place on a specific deadline. And this is just a completely different out of current standing annexation code. And so we would have to most likely contact, I'm guessing the LG's office, because I think they're the final say when it comes to annexations, that, hey, we understand we can pass a resolution. We understand Sandy can pass a resolution that agree these areas will go to Cottonwood Heights. Is there anything else that you need? And it will be executed upon the trigger that's in that bill on that date.
So with my preliminary discussions with council from Sandy, I don't think they would go for passing a resolution.
They want it, is what
They
you're saying.
want it. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's property tax revenue.
I mean, you could have an additional discussion and say, hey, look, the folks in these area have made it clear they want to go to Cottonwood Heights.
If that was clear, I think we'd have,
You know, we could make that argument, have those discussions. I'm not wanting to complicate things for you. I apologize. I'm just giving you another
Oh,
insight into Representative Tusher's intent and what he put in that bill.
I'm already honestly a little bit embarrassed that I have to go back and say, whoops, sorry, this is not what we have to do.
I
So
mean,
I'm trying
look,
to make
the
it a
trigger's
little
not
bit
for a
more
couple of years. We could try to go down this avenue of petitioning and everything that you've been talking about. We could go down that path. If for some reason there's some hiccups along the way, we could use that last
so
trigger that I talked about.
If we were able to pass a resolution, that wouldn't take effect until July of 27.
That's my understanding. These things are brand new, went into effect, what, July 1? So they would need to be dug into. I'm supportive, whatever path you think, I'm supportive on how you want to dice this apple.
I imagine one of the issues with doing two petitions is like you said, you don't know the other group as well as the.
Well, we've said we don't want one without the other.
Why?
That's what we discussed in a council meeting before. We said we don't want one without the other. We want both.
I mean, I'd take one. Why would we not take one?
I'd be okay with, and so we talked about this earlier, Councilwoman Sharkey and Sandy said, hey, look, Creek Road is that divide. We should just keep that divide. And I told her, well, that's not true. Because right below Highland Drive, it does actually cross Creek Road. It's already been there. It's been there, I think, since incorporation. It's my understanding.
2012.
Okay, 2012, that argument's not a thing.
Yeah.
So if we could take some of these areas, it'd be great to have them all, Suzanne. But
Well, okay, so I can go back and I only have one signer of the 5 from the east area, 4 from the west area. And then we would have to submit new petitions or new notices of intent with new maps, which is not hard to produce.
Yeah.
And so we're still talking about, and I've read the code, I get it, that they still have to pay for the mailing. I mean, I guess I'll just see what I can do.
what's the cost on that? And look, we appropriated some funds. Was that to cover that?
That was for a survey that we don't.
That
think
was
we
for the
need now.
survey, and I don't think, according to Brad Park, I mean, they're licensed surveyors, they can produce that
Sure.
map that goes eventually to the lieutenant governor.
I agree
So
with that.
This
Okay.
process of the 9,000 that we were talking about budgeting is a non-issue.
So we should
It's the mailing.
look at the cost for that mailing. We've already put it into our budget, right, Scott? That 9,000
We
is,
put 10, just.
10. so that 10,000 is there. I would love for it to come back to the city and we don't, it can go into whatever other purpose, but if we've appropriated $10,000 specifically for the purpose of this annexation, we could probably
We can
use it for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at what the cost of that mail would be. I would be surprised, having done mail before, I'd be surprised if it's $10,000. It would not be
It's not-
$10,000.
No, it's a few hundred, but Shane, you can weigh in on this too, according to what the code says, which is it should be paid by the person who submits the notice. Is that right?
That's what it says.
But the county doesn't care. So I'm asking, do we care?
I mean, if we are, which we are, we have taken the initiative. We have taken the initiative not via a formal resolution. But our city council with supporting you has reached out to these folks and led this initiative. I'd have no problem having some of those resources go towards it.
So that removes a significant hurdle, I think. But, and I'll just read it here. The county shall mail the notice within 20 days after receiving from the person or persons who filed the notice a written request, and the second, payment of an amount equal to the county's expected actual cost of the mailing of the notice. So if we're willing to take that on as a city, that removes a huge hurdle.
I don't know why we wouldn't.
Yeah, for sure. You've got enough right here for.
Shane, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll have to look at it again, but if the council wants to pay that, I'll try to find a way for that to be okay.
Could they pay and then being reimbursed by the
Maybe so.
city? So
Maybe
that
so.
it looks more
Maybe so.
affording.
Okay, I'll get back with Scott Baird tomorrow. Tell him we're probably gonna have to do 2 notices, but I need to know how much it's gonna cost to make it.
Sure.
And then Shane can look and see, you know, how we could actually pay this. And again, if this were HB 330, where, you know, we've been so disabled in the process, they probably didn't think about some of these hurdles. I think I would, you know, not be pushing for this, but I think it warrants it because of the situation.
You know, as you go down this road, just don't forget that there is that option that if we could have that conversation with Sandy City and come to some understanding, there may be a way to just fix this without without some of this headache.
Okay,
So just think about it.
My worry is as soon as we step in and have the negotiation, they go, oh, let's hurry up.
They're aware.
Yeah, I knew they were aware, but somebody could come in and.
They're just greedy, you know, their revenues are 150 million.
Exactly.
Or 25.
you had a phone call with Mayor Zoltansky, and didn't she say it's fine if we take this?
The mayor backed off from what the council, multiple council members told me and said it wouldn't be that big a deal for us.
I think the one that is
But
most, Councilwoman Sharkey
Councilwoman Sharkey
represents that area, and so it's,
She won.
I mean, I understand it, so. Keep us posted.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. Okay, we'll move on to item 4 on our posted agenda. And we're grateful to have.
Five, okay, I have an old one.
Sorry, Matt. Yeah. Just stay quiet next time. So we have
Oh, you did, okay, oh, it's all good.
the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area. We have a board discussion. We have with us the board, I believe his executive director, Ben Hill, is here along with the board. We've been in some preliminary conversations about what it would look like to have the service area match the city boundaries. And so I think we've all had that discussion. Now, are we gonna have somebody present? Or Bill, Ben, you want to come up?
We have room for 5 of us.
You bet.
You know what?
I figure it out.
3, 4, 5. Come on up.
On board. I've got Rachel Anderson here again, with our legal counsel, and then we got the board of trustees.
Yeah.
We'll invite.
Art, come on up.
Come on up.
We appreciate the mayor and city council having us again.
Yeah, I'm gonna excuse myself.
Thanks, Mike.
Feels like family when we talk. That's where so close, it's neighbors, right? What I prepared this time is I went back to kindergarten and I learned how to draw. And so I've made the map and I put a little color coding to it. So it'll be a little easier to follow. And we got the big map here, but this one breaks it down so you can see right in front of you what it looks like. The black, the districts that are represented in black, to say District 1, 2, and 3, that would be our board of trustees. So as we have Patty in District 2, Barton 1, and Dan in 3. And then the color coordination is the city's boundaries, and I might be off with my coloring a little bit, but it kind of represents what we're looking at here. We're looking at this, like we mentioned last time, as a cleanup opportunity. One of the thoughts I was having recently is when the service area was first established, the Parks and Recreation District, in 1967, the building gets built a couple years later, and that building is just an indoor pool. You know, the amount of space it's taking is not very large. And over the years, through bonds, the residents, by supply and demand, said, we need a bigger rec center. We need a bigger rec center. We need this, we need an ice, we need outdoor. And it kept growing as our community grew. And one of the things we failed to do is, even when it was unincorporated Salt Lake County, as these developments came in and as the center got big enough to service the needs of a bigger circle, a bigger reach, we should have continued to annex or to expand our boundary with the county. We fast forward to 2005 when the city was incorporated, and I can't imagine the process that took to incorporate a city. And so I know the discussions that happened between the city and the service district was, hey, we need you to provide the parks and recreation services. Even at that point, there was a lot of public works because the city wasn't looking to have a public works department at that time. Even some public works elements that we would do in lieu of the county doing it. So I think we just got so busy and we didn't, at that point, we didn't go, oh, we are the Parks and Recreation agency that serves the Park and Recreation needs of Cottonwood Heights community, the entire city. So each resident should contribute to the to supplement those services. And I think it makes sense, but here we are, 2024, and our boundaries don't line up. And we have a facility now that it's service area. The county's goal is to have a rec center within 3 miles of a drive to every resident in the county. Everyone in Cottonwood Heights City is within 3 miles to get to the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center. It has all the amenities that you would want in a recreation center. And so again, we're just looking at saying, oh, wow, we have an opportunity here to match the boundaries up of the cities to the service area so that all residents can continue to support the Parks and Recreation amenities that we have. So what we did a couple of weeks ago is we came and did a work session with the city, and we talked about, okay, what's the next step? The next step was to have a work session with our Board of Trustees. Rachel and I have had that discussion as well with the trustees. And then we were to come back, we talked about coming back to doing another work session. So here we are. Similar to other cities that we have surrounding us, like Murray or Sandy, and even this annexation discussion that was right before us is interesting because I looked at the boundaries of Alta Canyon Recreation District that they have. They're a special service district, a little bit different than us. But as those residents become part of Sandy, the ones that choose to become part of Sandy will most likely then follow up with becoming part of the Alta Canyon Special District tax. So most of the time when you move in or you build a house, you pay all the city service taxes. And in this case, I think we just fell behind with saying, oh, if we truly are the Parks and Recreation services, then all city residents need to pay that for that service. So I think the idea was to make sure that the Board of Trustees and the City Council could discuss and share thoughts. The thing that's easy for me, because I represent as the executive director, I represent the service area, Parks and Recreation District, and I know that these residents feel the burden of the extra tax for the services that we provide. And as we've done a bond or as we've done a tax increase, those residents who are also the residents of the city are looking forward to, and we've heard from a number of those that are saying, thank you for finally looking at this to where our neighbors and the rest of the city can help support the whole.
Can I add some thoughts? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Sure.
I don't mean any offense by this. I think that if we incorporated it as a city at the same time that there was a discussion if we should have a special service district, I don't know if we would have created a special service district and a city at the same time, but we just happened to be that this entire area was unincorporated Salt Lake County. I believe the rec district started back in the 60s. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then we incorporated obviously much later. I've been doing some digging on this topic, and it looks like, so to give folks some perspective, I can't speak for every city, but most cities have a Parks and Recreation department. They have staff that is paid to maintain, run, operate parks and recreation opportunities. We pay, I believe Cottonwood Heights City pays the rec center district just a little bit over $200,000. And that is to fully maintain, I believe, Mount View Park, or you can help me here, Mount View. What are the other ones?
Golden Hills.
Golden Hills
Mill Hollow Park.
and Mill Hollow Park.
Yeah.
They own, fully
Fairy
own
Hills
and
some other
operate.
streets, yeah.
Anzac, the rec center, which obviously has got the rec center, the pool, the pickleball courts, the open field and all that stuff. And then there's
Bywater Park.
Bywater. So we had this discussion previously, and I asked the question, look, if we're expanding our boundaries and you end up becoming more truly lined up with the parks and recreation functions for the entire city, You know, should we be paying that at all, or should it be reduced? I think there was a agreement that we should have that discussion on, should we be paying much of anything if they're collecting all of that money? Just to give my colleagues some perspective, you know, so Council Member Highland. So let's see if I get this correct. So you've probably seen this map, but this area right here to here is the only area in your district that is not,
Neighborhood.
yes, your neighborhood, that's not in the rec center district.
Right.
And I believe Councilmember Newell, I believe this is your area. Obviously, I have this really long stretch that is not in. And Councilmember Burrell's got this area. And I think for me, this kind of goes back to earlier discussions that we had. You know, should all residents be contributing to the functions of the rec center, these parks and recreation? There's plenty of residents in the area that maybe can go to Anzac Park, take, you know, benefit from these parks, but are not contributing anything to the function of that park. As I've talked to my neighbors, a lot of them are surprised that only some residents are paying in and some aren't. And I've made the argument in the past on both sides. I've made the argument, should you be able to look on a map in Cottonwood Heights City? Should you be able to pinpoint and say, I can get a tax break if I live on that street compared to a different neighbor that lives on a different street and has to pay that tax and contribute to these efforts? I don't think you should be able to do that. At the same time, you know, people that aren't in that area would say, look, tough. This district was already decided a long time ago. I haven't been paying the tax. Why should I be paying the tax at all now? And I guess I could get both those arguments, other than I don't know if I can name really another tax that we have that is a core function of the city where not everyone contributes.
I think
And
the
so
issue
that's
is
why.
after the fact, and this whole thing is clean up on aisle 9 in a big way.
Yeah.
And really because we pay county tax, but we don't get the benefit of using their
Agreed.
recreational facilities, so that's an additional burden. I have talked to 20 of my neighbors and they are not down with this. Because the threshold used to be 90% of the residents had to buy in to join the district before, you know, all of the residents were required. And now we're talking about a vote of 3 council members that are going to impose this tax on us that was not there before. So if I had purchased my house and, you know, it was obviously it wasn't something I was thinking about, but I purchased it before this tax was imposed on me. So it does seem quite unfair to all of a sudden rate my property $100 a year for me, which is a 60% increase from what I pay in city taxes right now on that property tax. It's a big climb. I think it's a big ask, and it almost seems like it's unreasonable for you to post. I get the argument about parks, you know, but we don't use Butler Park. We don't use Anzac Park. It's way far away from where we are. So I don't have buy-in from my neighborhood. In fact, I have staunch opposition to this.
Yeah, I do think that if you probably surveyed the specific areas and you said, hey, you're gonna have to contribute this tax, I do think that you probably get a different answer. If you go to the other 90% of your district that is paying the tax, and you say, hey, just a heads up here. Not only are you paying the tax, but there's this little neighborhood out here that does not have to contribute. And it happens to be an area that, you know, you may or may not live in. Is that something that the other 90% of the district would say, that's totally fine? Maybe, maybe not. I can only speak for my specific area and say, I have yet to come across somebody in my area that has said, I am more than happy to keep paying that tax. And not only am I more than happy to keep paying that tax, but I am more than happy to continue to have the rec center work in a smaller geographical area that is going to have to continue to raise taxes off of a limited number of the cities and residents' backs to make all of this function and work, compared to everyone holistically chipping in. I do struggle with the fact that it is a substantial tax increase for the people that aren't in. I would never disagree with that or make any argument other than it's significant amounts of money.
Can I add something here? real quick?
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things that would make more sense to me in the overall picture of doing this. Which would be number one. And in this environment, I get it might be a little bit difficult, but the cost to become a member then should be lowered. And if we don't do anything, the cost from somebody outside the district should probably triple.
Yeah.
To have somebody that can pay less outside of our city than what they would have to if they were part of it and on tax wise, we ought to look at tripling.
It needs to be more
to make-
advantageous.
If they want to use the rec center, they're gonna pay for it, way more than what if you're in the district and already contributing to the
And
facility.
Mayor, to add to that, people have told me that don't live in the district, it is cheaper. No
It is.
question, it is cheaper to go buy a non-member pass, which I then say it is, but the rest of the residents are subsidizing you so that it is cheaper. But it should be way more advantageous. In my opinion, I'm not on this board. This is someone who is an outsider, that it's a user. It should be more advantageous to someone who is contributing substantial amounts of money to use the rec center.
And I think that can be carried across, not just a membership. We think of a membership. I think if we can get the right software, a lot of us are hurdle with software. To make it a non-resident resident rate. So you could have a day rate. Are you resident? You have to prove your residency, and then now you got the day rate. It's a little complicated, but I think those are avenues we can look at. You're gonna sign up for soccer. Are you a resident or not resident? Different pricing. Right now, we do a lot of member, non-member, because that's what the software allows us to do. But there are softwares out there that allow you. to
I
do
would
it.
like to see, again, this is way down the road, but if we were to even continue this discussion on how is it financially more advantageous for the city? If it's, look, you're getting more revenue, we don't need to contribute as much to the rec center district. And how is it more advantageous to the folks that are in the district that it's more financially feasible?
Yeah, and Ben brought up a great point about other services you offer, like soccer and things that.
It should absolutely be more expensive.
Yeah.
I want to call out some things you had in your survey too, because I
Yeah.
need some clarification. In
Yes,
your
please.
survey, you said the district, meaning the special district, would dedicate all of the tax revenue from your area to go directly into a fund that would be used to rebuild and operate the Crestwood pool.
Yep.
That seems a little discriminatory to me.
Okay, fair enough. That,
And then also, you said when in your survey, you said, do you have an interest in preserving and updating the Crestwood pool for you and your neighbors? It wasn't a question of, are you willing to pay the 60%, though you did tell them how to calculate it?
100%.
Are you willing to now increase your property taxes by whatever that number is? That wasn't the question you asked. So when you talk about support, you have support for the Crestwood pool.
That's exactly right.
So.
What's
if
your
this is-
question?
Well, if this has been presented to your constituents as a way to save the Crestwood pool, that's not exactly what we're talking about here.
100%. They are completely different. There's no question about that. It is a pure function of, and this is something that we're talking about today, is just as the mayor talked about, how do we make it more advantageous for residents? That is something that should be discussed. For the folks, especially, look at these other areas. Are there parks that the rec center district may want to have up in that corner? Are there other things to make it more advantageous so that you have resources that you're paying into that are in your neighborhood? There are 3 existing parks. There's one down here, there's one in the middle, one up top. And that's something the district itself is going to have to make a decision on how do we look, if these areas are paying in, are there things that we could do for them in their neighborhoods? And it might be yes, and it might be no. That's not a decision that we'd have to make or can make. That's something that they would have to do. But there's no question that part of my calculus is to understand if they are paying in, are there additional resources that they can get in that area from the rec center? Which I think is a reasonable question to ask.
Could
I
we maybe,
agree.
could we maybe bring the board in of the rec center to give us your thoughts?
I think it's 2 different ideas we're looking at.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that's very divided. We're looking at incorporating the entire city. We're not saying we're gonna do this to save Crestwood.
Yeah.
That's down the road.
That's a separate issue.
Yeah.
But it's an issue we currently, right now, we can't really have a discussion about because the
No.
Crestwood situation is outside of our boundaries. So even to just have the conversation.
Yeah.
we have
And I
to
guess
have
since
that.
the topic's brought up, I'll just be fully transparent here. I've talked to the county about this. And there has to be that if that was something that were to even happen, which is not a decision that we as a council can make. There has to be protections and triggers in place that protect all of the residents for the entire city, protect everyone in the rec center district. That it would have to be in the district, which is a complete hypothetical. That's what we're talking about. B, there would have to be a trigger in place where there are the financial resources have been acquired, which if they're never actually acquired, they never get the pool. So there are things that have to be put in place as protections. And as was discussed earlier, that's a years and years down the road, not necessarily decision, but years and years down the road, implementation and a hypothetical at this point. But for me, the question is should, and I'd love to hear from the others here, should we try to sync up the boundaries?
Does that mean
Or not.
eliminating the people that are outside the boundary?
It doesn't. We keep them in.
So I came
Kind of
up
blows
with
up the
this,
argument.
came up with this brilliant idea. Let me emphasize brilliant.
Yeah.
So that maybe we should put this on the ballot as a non-binding initiative. Does the city believe that the Conroe Heights Rec Center boundary should match the city boundary? And we can't do it, so it wasn't that brilliant.
We looked into it just to see what do the residents think
You can't
is
put
sound
non-binding
policy. But yeah,
Questions on the, yeah, so.
we've been trying to look at
I
ways to.
think fundamentally people would say yes until they see the tax bill and they go, oh, wow. I'm not sure about that.
Well, I think the question, you're probably right. But would the people that are already in the district say, I'm already paying it?
Of course they would. But why wouldn't anybody who's already paying the tax say, you now get to pay a tax that, and we don't, honestly, part of the reason I ran, for many reasons, but one is, hello, we're down here by Creek Road. You know, we don't have the services. We don't have the parks. We don't have these kinds of things. And so to lasso us into this district, I get the reasoning. It's, as you said, it's an after the fact thought. It doesn't seem quite fair when wasn't done as it maybe should have been or could have been previously.
Scott and I met and we briefly talked about just the impact of the percentage. I mean, it goes back to what Matt said. If the city was going to incorporate from the get-go, right, the city would just have a department called Parks and Recreation.
100%.
But the tax burden that now these residents pay to the Parks and Recreation District, in order to have that same services provided by the city, and say the city had a Park and Rec department and every citizen paid, the city would have to implement a 40% tax increase to its residents. That would affect everybody to get the services that we provide. And I think the services in which we provide, sometimes we look at a map and we go, oh, it's right here. But that rec center provides services for everybody. And it's like a school district, right? Like once we pay our school taxes and our kids get done with school, we think, oh, good, I don't have to pay those taxes anymore. No, we're in it for life, and my kids don't even go to school, or I don't go to the library. We all just have these fundamental taxes that we pay for, and I think it's a cleanup. You're right.
Why wouldn't you dissolve a special district and make it a Parks and Rec in the city?
It's a very complicated process to do that, and one that would affect multiple districts.
So will all of the parks that are owned by the city then be acquired by the special district?
I think those are discussions that the city and the service area would need to have. The idea to maintain those would definitely dramatically change, right? We charge the city in order to maintain those. We should be getting 100% self-sufficiency, meaning whatever it costs us to maintain it, we get reimbursed by the city. We have not raised that for a number of years, and so we are well below where we should be. But the idea is we get the whole tax, then we're having a different discussion, because now all these residents are paying for parks and recreation services. So why would the city pay again? Would make a valid argument. the owner of said park, it makes sense. And one of the things the city has, if you look at the city, when the city incorporated in 2005, we had our 3 parks and the county had a few parks. Since the city has came into the game, we are getting parks again. And it's like, wait, why is that happening? It's because the city has resources that we don't. You have sales tax, you have these different ways to get parks. Now here we are getting parks again that okay, we need you to maintain them. Great. We love this. We're working together. You look at it as overall, you can think, oh man, this is negative. Like, oh my gosh, it actually is the best system in place to make sure that your dollar for Parks and Recreation is going to Parks and Recreation. If it was a department, how often do we as a field go, oh, dang, it would have been nice to have that, but it needed to go to a road or it needed to go to police or whatever. So it's the best model. And I think the thing that we need to do, and that what will help, is the Parks and Recreation services that you get in Cottonwood Heights should be above and beyond anywhere else. And we're doing a pretty good job with that on the backs of these residents. If we're able to expand, the additional resources will continue to make us the top and continue to make sure that we're providing services for everybody. And when a park discussion comes up, like down in your area or over here in Ellen's, and there's an opportunity to get it, the city can go, yeah, let's buy it because the service area is ready. They can maintain it. And so I think I think you're right. It should have been step by step by step. It wouldn't have been such a Band-Aid rip. We're ripping a Band-Aid off and it hurts.
Do you guys know what percentage of capacity you guys operate at? I mean, do you of how many people you could have come use the facilities versus how many do?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the Salt Lake County's master plan. So in 2015, they did the circles of every rec center that's there, and they do a circle of 3-mile radius. So within our 3-mile radius, we have the service capacity to serve all those people, which are well more than those just inside the city. But again, because the city is paying it, because the city residents and the service area residents are paying an additional tax, they should get a premium discount on all things. And I think it lines us up with the other cities. So like if I'm in Sandy, I'm paying the county's Park and Rec tax. I'm paying the Sandy's Park and Rec tax. In Cottonwood Heights, if I'm in the boundaries, I'm paying the city's tax, the county's Parks and Rec tax, and our tax. But if I'm not in there, I'm not contributing to the Park and Rec tax.
So
like
does
everyone
Sandy
does.
have a separate Parks and Rec tax? I know a lot of municipalities do.
They have a Parks and Rec tax. I would think it's more of a parks tax that all the city.
Mhm.
But then Alta Canyon is a special service district, which is different. So
So it's the same as us,
It's a little bit.
plus if we had a parks tax.
yeah, and it's a little different because the governing authority for Sandy for Alta Canyon is the city council. Where
There's a
our
difference between a
council is
special
the board.
service district, special district, those names are so similar and it's super confusing, but the ones that have that extra word in it, special service district, are
What is the
still a
boundary for that?
little bit more controlled by the.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I looked at it and their map is worse than our map on our website. It's like, but it goes right up to the boundary of Creek Road, right? Like, so if Sandy and this pocket that we have over here in Sandy, it actually is a bubble. So the Sandy bubble that pays to us does not pay to Alta Canyon, but all their neighbors do. So, because it would be a double tax, right? They can't pay two.
Districts don't overlap, but provide the same service.
Yep.
And typically, it's the same with cities, you know, you don't typically have a city and a district providing the same service on top of each other.
Anybody ever lobbied the county to exclude it from the parks tax since they're already paying it?
Yeah, see,
Is that even a
It's a-
legal thing?
right.
It's an interesting question, yeah.
And you know, I think the route we're seeing the county go down is that they continue to give away their parks. They're continuing to give, I think the next step is if this rec center isn't regional in base, then like say Holiday City, you need to now take this on. It seems like that's the trend. I don't have any insight, but the reason why I bring that up is because we're already ahead of the game. We can provide the services at a high level and we're not at the whim like Crestwood Pool is for the county, where they're gonna make a decision that is based on the entire county and not really based on those that use the pool, and that makes sense.
I go back and forth because there are some times where I'm just so frustrated with all of this, and the Mayor and I've talked about, well, gosh darn it, county, can't you just take it all, and can't you just take the financial liability of it all, because we're already paying you taxes for it, and you know, then I have to put my other hat on of, I'm trying to make lemonade out of lemons and trying to work with what's existing and seeing if there's solutions. And there may not be, there might be. I think that's what this discussion's for, is to get feedback. We all represent different districts and have different dynamics. And so, you know, we're all anyway. I don't know, Councilmember Newell, if you have thoughts on this.
No, I'm still processing this. When I look at the map, I worry about the taxes for folks that haven't been taxed before. But I also think about, you know, me and my equity thing. I always think about those that are already being taxed in. How come they're not paying an equal taxing? So I'm still thinking about how this can actually we can come to some solution here.
Yeah.
Without causing a whole lot of consternation across. That's where I'm sitting.
So maybe we could, if I could just suggest, I think this is probably a newer discussion to council members than, you know, some of us. I've been trying to spend a decent amount of time on trying to understand this. Maybe we just spend some more time on it, Mayor, and allow folks to digest it and put some thoughts together, and we might get to a point where we feel comfortable or not.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Make
Victor.
one more comment.
Yes.
Sorry, this is a little bit going backwards. Going back to that concept of who owns a municipal service, and typically, like I was saying, you're not going to be stacking, you know, municipal services. There's clearly some exceptions with the county, which also provides Parks and Rec. But for instance, if you're talking fire or sewer, it's going to be one entity, and either the city's going to own it or a district's going to own it, is typically how it works. So we're subject to basically this evolutionary process where in your case, and this is not the case with every city, but in your case, a district was created to provide this municipal service before the city was provided. So we already owned Parks and Rec before the city was created. So we own the responsibility within the purple area. But without fixing the boundaries, I would argue that you still have the responsibility as to all the other areas. And so then the question becomes, if you guys don't expand, if we don't true up the boundaries, what is the city doing to provide Parks and Rec to these areas? And how is it paying for that? And are you just taking money from the whole city and directing it to those areas? Or are you somehow collecting money just from those areas? Or are you doing nothing? Like, and I don't even know, like, I don't know where the parks are located, but is there anything in those? Or are you just saying, yeah, we don't really need to provide Parks and Rec, and that may be the answer too, but I just wanted to throw that out there as like part of the consideration of like how this works. And if you were to do this boundary adjustment process, you could sort of wash your hands of it and be like, okay, we know that everyone in our area is both being served and being paid for it. And we don't have to worry about, is there any sort of like inequity that we're not technically doing anything here? Or to the extent that we are paying a little bit for, you know, the district to pay for some parks, we're taking that money from the whole, from including these people that are already paying for the district to, you know, to do things for these outside. So just another consideration.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's all or nothing, that then the city park should become part of the special district. We're gonna true up the boundaries.
Well,
Why the different ownership of the parks?
for one,
Some owned by the special district, some owned by the city.
Question?
oh, yeah, and that's what we were saying, is that's definitely something worth having a conversation on.
And our only two options are either the 90% of people agree, which is what it is now, or 3 council members decide, and then we true up the
Well, it
boundaries.
wouldn't even be three
There's
council.
no three, it involves both board,
They
both
would
the
have
council
to.
and the board, in either the annexation procedure or the boundary adjustment. It's a decision of both.
I think
Is
you're
that-
talking about a vote, it would take 3 out of their 5.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
and then 2 out of your 3.
Yes.
And we
I
can't,
think.
from my
Then you're gonna not support it, so I'm talking more about what's.
from my understanding as well, there are a certain percentage of residents can oppose
Yes.
the, I guess, tax increase. Or, and then if a certain percentage does oppose, believe it would go onto the ballot.
If we went through the annexation procedure, that's.
That's
that
the
route,
case.
but
If we went to
we're looking
this,
at
the
boundary
truing up, it
adjustment,
would not.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we
I need
feel like
more
it's,
information about that. I don't understand what you just said.
so there's two procedures that you can take to adjust boundaries of a district. One of them is called a boundary adjustment, and you do that when you have a boundary that touches each other. So you couldn't do an annexation, like, we have this weird little spot up here that obviously couldn't have been done by a boundary adjustment because it's not contiguous, it doesn't touch. But when the boundaries touch and you're both providing the same service essentially, and the argument, like I just said, is the argument is that the city is currently responsible for Parks and Rec in those blank areas. So when you both provide it, the two entities that are providing the service can agree to basically shift their boundaries. The thought being is that the residents are paying for one or the other. It's just the entities that are providing it are kind of going to this process to agree to shift, and I will be responsible instead of you. The other process is an annexation process, which is when the city basically, there's different ways to do annexation, as you were discussing earlier, a petition process, or there's a process for the city to actually initiate it and say, we want this to be no longer our responsibility. So you would pass a resolution saying, we would like to ask the district to take over these areas so that we are not responsible for them, and you would send that to us. And then we'd hold a hearing, and it's very similar process at the end of the day. With this process, we would hold the hearing and then vote to do it or not. The boundary adjustment process has a 50% protest requirement, meaning if you get 50% of the property owners to protest, it kills the process. In the annexation procedure, if you get 10% of the residents to protest, it sort of kills it, but you can also take it to an election at that point. They're very similar, just doing basically the same thing.
So an example of the boundary adjustment would be, say, in District 4, a little square area, if that was just a slide to the right, that would be a boundary adjustment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but we
If
could,
it would just come from here and slide over here, that would be a boundary adjustment.
yeah, I mean, and we could do a boundary adjustment with any of the areas we're talking. We could also do an annexation with any of the areas we're talking. There are two procedures that are available to us.
but what makes sense is, it does seem like all or not, or there are little areas that might go, oh, I want to annex it, and that would be the reason why we'd probably want to do an annexation, is like, it's just a portion wants to come in,
Yeah.
just like they've done in the past.
Like
But
a
in this
development,
case-
we're gonna
And we
develop.
did
it.
that.
Hibachi.
The
Yeah,
interesting thing, that square shown is Hibachi. They want it in,
Yeah,
they
That's
went and.
that's why I just thought about that
Annexed in,
example.
yeah.
So, and the other thing I don't think we mentioned, but maybe everyone got it, was the protest comes from the affected areas.
right.
So if it's the annexation, it's 10% of the affected areas, or if it's 50%. The thing that we're not hearing, and I think when I talked to the mayor last about this is, and Suzanne, you said it, if the whole city got to weigh in on this, it would be a landslide on
Sure.
of it. So when you're talking about a 10% protest, that might be likely that you get that.
Of the affected areas, because.
But if you get a 50%, I feel like if 50% speaks up, then yeah, we gotta go a different route with all this. But 10% seems really low. Yeah, I wouldn't want my taxes raised either, but I would understand.
We're probably talked already too much, but just think about what we're doing with the GeoBond. Somehow you gotta sell this, you gotta help the citizens understand what this means. Right now, it's just not palatable.
Yeah.
So how do we make it palatable?
That's a great point.
Especially because it's such a huge tax increase all at once.
Yeah, I think the first step is, and it kind of follows the procedures, making sure the board of trustees and the elected officials of the city are on the same page with understanding the big concept of it. Both city and district would have to pass a resolution with the intent for the boundary adjustment. Is just meaning, hey, we're intending to look into this. And then we would both have to have an open house or a public hearing about it. So at that public hearing would be another time. I think the newsletter, I mean, I don't know if you'd be open to a newsletter article, Mayor, where you explain how, like, coming from the mayor saying, hey, this is why we're doing this. We're all gonna be on the same page. I think that could go a far way to educate people. if they read
Well, I'm a
it, you
bit
know.
concerned that we're asking for geo bond and then we're asking for this too. I mean, the timing isn't ideal.
Yep.
For a double tax increase. So
Yeah, and I think talking about timing, I don't think we're in a hurry. Nope.
Yeah.
So if the city's like, hey, we're trying to do this geo bond, can we table this for a little? Yeah, let's table it.
Okay.
We're not in a hurry. We do know that ideally it's the right thing to do. And so just how
I
do we
would
get
agree with
there?
you. It's just, it's,
Tough pill.
it's clean up on aisle 9
Yep.
and it's not clean. It's not grab a mop and let's wipe this up. This is much more complicated. Good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having
We're
us.
supposed to take on the hard things, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate everything you come. Yep. Love working with you guys.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Look forward
See you
to the
next
Bonneville
week.
days with you all next week.
Bonneville.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys do a float, don't
Yeah, we do. We
Yeah.
We drive on the park to breakfast.
Here. You want this back for?
Well, you got that now if you want. But you want big one. I got.
I don't This your pen?
Okay, so we are gonna transition into our, item number 5 on our agenda, which, we have, I believe, Dennis Astle. Dennis here?
With who?
With, Pearson Butler or Think Architecture. Do we have anybody here? with
We
you
have
here?
Stephen Hayden on, online, yeah.
Okay.
Sent the other ones, inside.
Oh, no, there we go. Okay, so there's Dennis Astle and Brad Gilson. So why don't you all come up? You have to come up to the table. We got a couple seats for you. And they are here with, to do an old mill development presentation to the council.
Wait.
We're only gonna have about 2 or 3 seats, yeah, for you guys. if That's okay.
Good, good, my notes.
So Dennis, I understand you're gonna control the presentation, is that right?
Then when you start asking technical questions, I'm
not saying anything. That's how we call being man of the hour.
So this is Brad Gilson, and then who are you?
Stephen Peden.
Okay.
Good. Hang on to one of these. Like to pass around these. So that, as I make reference to them, I have that in front of you. On this thing.
Just one for customer. Oops. Yeah. Okay, that's, oh, they're staples.
You probably need one.
We starting there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Well, as the mayor said, I'm Dennis Astle. I'm the attorney for the Clifford family. And then we have Brad Gilson and Stephen Peden, who is with the architectural firm we're working with. Someone Brandon Reese is here too. And John Shirley, the architectural firm. I wanted to start out today by discussing the old mill structure first, even though it's part of a separate process and we've deferred discussion about that in the past. We just felt like there's so much controversy and speculation and rumors that I would like to just lay those to rest and invite you to study the issues yourself if you have doubts about what we are presenting. Let's see, Reagan, where'd you go? So I think Reagan is going to start, and then I'll take over from there.
And for your information, Regan Shelby is one of the family members from the Walker family. Oh, you're fine.
Talk loud, they can't hear you.
We wish to thank Mayor Wykers, Councilman Holton, and former city manager Tim Tingy for making time to discuss the old mill. We appreciate the advice we received from them. We have spoken with the Utah Historical Society, the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers, and we meet with the Cottonwood Heights Historic Committee in August. The old mill is over 130 years old. After a fire gutted it in 1893, the interior was made usable in the 1930s for the Old Mill Club. Our mother worked there as a waitress starting at age 12. This restoration lasted 40 years, during which our father ran the Old Mill Arts and Crafts Fair on weekends. The building was upgraded in the 70s to meet code and was again made occupiable. The Old Mill Disco, where my siblings and I worked as teens, went the way of disco. This upgrade to the building lasted 30 years. The building was rented as a haunted house, festival, movie, party, wedding venue from the 1950s to 2005 by our grandparents, our parents, and Doug and I. Rental of the building ceased due to safety issues. These business ventures involve evenings and weekends after regular day jobs. The building is a magnet for ghost hunters, vandals, taggers, and now arsonists. It is difficult to secure and is unsafe. Responsible discussion of the future of the old mill is necessary. A rebuild cannot cause hardship to taxpayers anywhere. Cottonwood Heights City wisely declined ownership. For 40 years, people have approached Doug with ideas for the use of the old mill. After researching the costs, everyone walked away. If it had been feasible, it would have been done. It is reasonable that a rebuild should mitigate circumstances that make business difficult at the old mill. Maintenance, heating, cooling, sewer, security, parking, traffic, and business hours must be structured so it will thrive. We invite all who care for the old mill to attend all meetings, to bring viable solutions, and make time to explore funding options. Thank you.
Just to follow up to that, through the years, as Reagan said, last 40 years, we've had different groups come and want to talk about doing something with the old mill, rehabilitate it, use it for a different purpose. And they, as Reagan said, they've all walked away. And the reason they walk away is as they study it and do their due diligence, they find out that the cost is prohibitive. And in fact, from our recent studies and engineering reports, not only is the cost prohibitive, it would be ineffective because the structure is so old and unstable. And it's not because of lack of maintenance, it's because of the nature of the structure. In 2022, we had an engineering study prepared by Dorian Adams from Reevely Engineering to assess its condition. His conclusion was that it's a dangerous building. It met 13 of 18 considerations that are used to determine whether a building is dangerous. Any one of those conditions can cause a structure to be classified as dangerous. Mr. Adams is noted in his field as being an expert on preservation of old structures. He concludes not only that it's dangerous, but can't be rehabilitated. We then asked Brad Gilson, a structural engineer and former city engineer, to look at possible means to preserve the building and to estimate the costs of that preservation. Again, he concluded there's no feasible way to preserve it because of the nature of the structure. It is stacked stone with no foundation. And so
without a competent foundation, you can't even really rehab it. You think of the historic structures that are being rehabilitated by the LDS Church, the Provo City Tabernacle, the Temple in Salt Lake. They all started with a competent foundation, and this is a whole different situation. It'd have to be torn down piece by piece, foundation poured, and then you have to figure out a way to attach a steel structure to the stone in order to keep it from crumbling and to give it shear strength and earthquake strength. And that's just almost impossible. And Brad's report outlines that. It is, he also did a cost estimate on what it would cost to do what I just mentioned. And his estimate is that it would cost $100 million to try to do some kind of rehabilitation.
Is that to save the entire building or portion?
The entire building.
Entire-
Yeah. As part of our development proposal, we propose and we plan to preserve some of the iconic elements of the building on site in a sort of monument, not sort of, but in a monument. And we intend to use stone and other elements of the mill inside the development so that there's still some memorials and we're making use of those materials to enhance the appearance and use of the development. So even though we've heard from others that they're positive, there's money out there, we have not found it. And neither has anybody that has come and made proposals to us, because as soon as they start doing their due diligence, they find out the cost is so prohibitive that it can never be recovered, let alone even feasible. So that is the status of the old mill, which is why we started a process to allow the demolition and preservation of those iconic elements of the mill. And that is our current intent. So
Have we seen that? Have we seen that proposal about what elements you would actually?
Not
see,
yet.
how you would do that?
no, we have not. And in our later meetings, we plan on, we're getting some design work and a cost for the preservation and creation of a monument. We don't have those yet. We've seen some renderings, but they're not ready yet to really do cost estimates and produce. But that is the plan.
Would that be on the current site or would you be moving it?
We do near the current site. Okay, so we think that the best place for that would be in the entry for the development itself, and then in various locations within the development. So you'd have some of those iconic elements right there at the entry. So it's near the trail, people could see it. People would be able to walk over and see it. And we would keep it again near the trail so that it's visible, available, and people can get to it.
So just want to make sure I understand. So it would be a demolition and then you would take parts and you would reconstruct
Correct.
certain elements elsewhere.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And because of the nature of the stone itself, it's granite, but they're different sized stones. And as I said, it's not sitting on a foundation. And so you're not going to be able to go, for example, rebuild the tower. Maybe you can build a replica of the tower that's not nearly as tall. And that's kind of our thought process. You can't build the walls as they exist today because you can't go that high, given the nature of the stone itself. So But we will be bringing, renderings of what we are proposing for that memorial and for use within the project. So I hope that satisfies you for now.
I've been contemplating this because obviously there's a desire for historic preservation.
Right.
I want to see that, and then there's also a desire for progress, and I was recently in Rome. And Rome has buildings built around historic sites.
Right.
They preserve and they progress.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm curious about, what you're proposing specifically.
Yeah, and I don't know the conditions there. We have earthquakes. We sometimes have heavy snow loads. We sometimes get high winds. And the sheer strength of what's standing there today would not tolerate that. It would crumble. And it is so close to the street. One of the concerns that we have is that it will topple into the street because of the current location. So, it's really just a public safety issue for us, and for the city. So that's kind of the status right now, and we're in process with a variance application to allow for that to occur. And in that process, we hope that we can come up with a joint effort and commitment to build a certain structure to give that preservation some element of preservation for the old building.
So that variance process will not come to us. That variance process goes to our hearing officer, which is already, I believe, scheduled to be put forth before him.
Yeah, I think the variances are filed with the economic development director, and so they are currently engaging, and I have engaged an engineer to verify our engineer conclusions. And so we're anxious to see that happen. And if their conclusions are different, then we'll sit down and talk about it. In the meantime, we are proceeding forth with a development application. We haven't filed the application yet because that's not the process.
One more question for you, sir. You mentioned engagement with the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers and the Utah Historical Society. These proposals of you doing the demolition and building to the structures, is that something that you've talked about with those groups? Have they shown support for that level of historic preservation?
So
Any
those,
feedback?
it's interesting. They want nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, the Utah Historic Preservation Office said that's not what we do. Daughters of Utah Pioneers really expressed no interest in it.
Okay, fair enough.
We wish somebody had some interest, because honestly, the Walker family has always, they've got a deep love for that building and the property, and have always wanted to see something happen there and preserve it. But it's not economically or physically feasible. As we go through the process of development, we have appreciated the comments and advice we've received from staff, from Commissioner Holton and the mayor. At the mayor's suggestion, we had a meeting with the board of Old Mill Estates HOA. Although statements have been put forward suggesting that we made a commitment to do nothing but single family development on that property, the facts show otherwise. In front of you, you've got 2 pages, one dated that was for an HOA meeting held at the architect's office on November 21st, 2022. Although we hoped we'd get back to them sooner, for lots of different reasons, we finally did get back to them on March 18th of 2024. And in both of those meetings, we presented a development plan that had a condo portion and townhome portions. You know, we've never suggested that we would limit that to single-family homes. I think maybe where the confusion came was, if you look at those HOA proposals, you'll see in the, on the, what is it? I never can think, it's south edge of the bottom side of Big Cottonwood Creek. We're showing two subdivisions for single-family development, single-family homes. And we're committed to making the character of those developments match the character of phase one of Cottonwood Creek Estates. And so that's the commitment we have made, and that's what we're planning and what we're processing right now.
Quick question, I went to part of the meeting that was held a couple of months ago. And I heard about a lot of that confusion.
Yeah,
Where do you think that came from?
I do think it came from our discussion. I mean, this proposal was reviewed by the HOA board. And we received some comments and suggestions from them about how we could make it better. We listened to those and then presented the second plan. But in both cases, they had condos and townhomes. I do think, I'm putting this forward in the best intentions. I do think the question about, or suggesting single-family development came from the comments we made about the Canyon Creek Phase 2 development and Wasatch West Estates development that we're moving through the process right now. That's the best I can suggest. I don't know
So you're
otherwise.
saying basically they just didn't hear.
Well, the fact is they made comments, and for example, one comment was in the first proposal. The condo was right here at the entry to the development and kind of right across the street from where the neighbors come in and out. And they said, we'd rather not have the higher density project right there. Could you move it elsewhere? And so we said, okay, we'll look at that. So that's all I can suggest as a possible means for what happened. We feel bad about the miscommunication. We really do. It's not,
My concern was there was a lot of misunderstanding on that.
absolutely. And we do feel bad about that because that was not our intent. That sends around. So, having had that input from the HOA board and then taking another version back to them, it's a mystery to us, but maybe there's a good reason for it. But that's been presented to them twice now. And again, we just don't understand where they came away saying there's nothing to defend in there. The design team and Doug Shelby listened to those comments from the HOA board, and we actually reduced density by 25%. And we moved the condo project to a whole different area of the property that is much less visible. In fact, we think after landscaping and things, you probably can't, well, you'll hardly see it. That's our anticipation. The current proposal is for, again, condos and townhomes. And but before I get there, I'd like to show you the exhibits that we presented at the community workshop on July 11th this month. The first slide shows you the existing zoning, which is legal non-conforming mining and processing of ore. And that could continue because it's grandfathered in based on the original use, which has continued in one form or another for all of these years. That's not what the family would prefer. They really prefer to have a nice development there that would complement the neighborhood. On the second page, we have map showing the current zoning. So the current zoning shows that we have a regional commercial use and single family use. And the regional commercial, as shown in the ordinance, includes really just about any kind of commercial development. And in using some simple layouts, we estimated that we could probably achieve about 50,000 square feet of commercial uses there. But again, the family doesn't think that's the best use for this neighborhood. Because it's already zoned, we could just present a site plan and get it approved. Don't want to. We'd really rather have some really nice residential development. The next page in that packet of documents you have shows the general plan that was adopted by Cottonwood Heights 15 or so years ago. And you'll see that mixed use is the largest portion of that, which allows for density of up to 35 units per acre. It's not been our intent to maximize density here. And I'll explain a little more about that, but instead we suggested and we've talked to the city about using their PDD zone, which allows for a clustering of housing, different features of the property. And we have suggested that we'd use the density for townhomes of 10 units per acre and for the medium density area 35 units per acre. But again, it's set back away from the street. Even with the existing landscaping that runs along the streets, you'll really barely be able to see it from Cottonwood Canyon Road. We're also proposing a trail that runs along the other side of the Cottonwood Creek because we think it's a better location than a street side trail. And it would be a public accommodation, so the public would have free use of it as well as the local residents. So as we look at it, we think this is a much better plan. Follows generally the general plan that has been adopted by Cottonwood Heights, but uses a different zoning concept so that we can cluster, we can use attached housing, and then of course the condo project. So we'll have essentially 3 different products because some of the townhomes will be of a different size. The ones that run along the creek will be larger units. And so it's a better concept, we think, for the city than, current use, current zoning, or even the general plan. We're kind of giving credence to the general plan, but we're using a different zoning ordinance so that between ourselves and the city, we can devise terms and conditions for that development that will enhance the property and enhance the development and provide the public with a better product. So that's our current plan, and you'll see that in our initial proposals to the HOA board, we were projecting about 400 units. The current PDD concept plan is for a total of 295 units, 175 of those being condos and the remainder being townhomes. Now we've invited different landowners to come in and join with us, but we're not prepared to talk about that yet because they really haven't joined in with us. It's the Palmer property that sits almost in dead center of the development, sits and straddles the proposed aqueduct easement or the aqueduct easement that's there. So if they join, we'd probably end up with another 10 or 15 townhome units. But they would be townhome units and not condo units. So we think that our plan provides a better use than the general plan and a much more attractive development. We've heard a lot of concerns from residents and from the council people we've talked to and the mayor that traffic is a big issue, and we understand. Early on in the project, we had a traffic study done by Joe Perrin, who's a PhD traffic engineer, who concluded that if we wanted to maximize density, the current road and intersections would accommodate 500 new residences. Again, we didn't elect to go to the maximum density that the road would support. But you know, so really we've limited it to 295 units using, and we also changed the configuration of the entrances to the project.
How many of those units are in the condo?
175. And if you're looking at your map there, you can see that we've now incorporated 3 different entry and exit points so that we can minimize interference with Old Mill Estates where their road comes in and spread out the entry and exit points and help traffic flow as a little better. And based on Joe Perrin's study, that the road and the intersections will easily support 295 units. So next I want to talk about some of the things that the Walker family, oh, go ahead.
You think unit, is this based on one vehicle per unit?
You know, I don't remember the parameters of his study. It's we know it's multiple trips per day per unit. And so you remember this? 9. Okay. So, you know, again, Joe is a PhD in traffic engineer. He's performed traffic studies for cities, for the state. He's pretty well known and well respected. So,
Can you share that study with us?
yeah, absolutely. That's one of the next things we're going to be doing is letting you have copies of those studies. Okay. So that you can confirm it and really invite, if we deliver them to the city, we'd be happy if you put them on your website and the public could review it. They could have their own engineers review it. You know, because we're not hiding the ball here. It's you know, and normally we wouldn't put that out for public consumption until we made an actual application to the city. Right now, we're in a different process because of the requirements of the PDD zone, which requires 2 neighborhood meetings, before we make application. It was suggested to us by
Just
staff.
heads up, Dennis, we're about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So,
I'll hustle.
Okay.
It was suggested by staff that we use a collaborative process with the planning commission and the council, which is why we're here. It's a work session. We want you to understand the project. We want to hear all your comments and suggestions that you may have. And it's also been suggested that we obtain find a development partner who's, a larger developer to assure the success of the project, and we are currently undergoing a search for that right development partner. It's really important to the Walker family that we use the right development partner because we want some level of control for the architecture, so we don't end up with some, what I call cartoon apartments and things like that. So we've started that process. We're going through the neighborhood meetings. We are seeking a larger development partner, and we're going to maintain some level of control over that project so that it's the proud legacy of the Walker family. I was just going to mention a couple of things that the Walker family has done over the years for the city. One is we gave them property years ago to change the what's the word I'm searching for? Change the location of Big Cottonwood Road to eliminate a narrow section that would, we think, cause problems, and the city thought it would cause problems. So they've done that. They've donated the land that touched the Walker property for the existing trail. It was done, as a donation. They routinely allow the city and others to stage construction projects at the property, including a Superfund, site, because of its unique location, and it makes staging a much easier process. So they've donated rock for the dog park. They've donated a large boulder for the east end of the trail for the monument there. So they've tried to be as good citizens and help the city where they could. That ends my presentation, but we're happy to take questions or comments at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to see that traffic study because in reality, you're not gonna get one vehicle per unit.
No.
So we're talking about 600 vehicles versus 500 safe to homeless people that are the family. So yeah, definitely we want to see that. That's one of the big things I'm looking at.
Okay.
And then also looking at that density overall and its overall impact on any of the traffic outlets and limits, because from here, it looks like your traffic is gonna be driven to just those, 3 outlets?
Yes.
And in reality, based on my short tenure in watching how traffic works, folks are gonna use the easiest path to get to where they wanna go.
Yeah.
And it looks like from here, there's probably gonna be 2 paths that are gonna be used to jump on 3000 onto the freeway. Most folks won't go this opposite direction when they head to Front Union.
Well, I think it's a matter probably of more of convenience for exiting the development itself. For example, the condo are much closer to the upper entrance, the eastern entrance.
I see that.
And then there's another southern entrance, or not southern, but western entrance. That's really I don't remember the name of that development. Was it Mill Point? So Mill Point has an easement from the Walker family to provide access to that subdivision, but it's still our road. So that's our intent there. And then, of course, you're gonna have people exiting at the entry point where the townhomes are. And yes, you're more likely than not to see them go out that way and then over to 30th East. But if, you know, they can also go up to the other direction and get out on 14, depending on where they're headed. If you're heading to the freeway, then 30th East is the place to go.
And I'm thinking about the workforce.
Yeah.
That'll be the folks that are heading that way. It's gonna be hard to get them to think about going out this other direction.
Right, right.
Yeah, so do we, or is this comments from us or is this just our listening?
During the work session, we don't have public comment, but we do right after.
In like
our-
25 minutes,
in our-
there'll be public comment
Yeah.
in there, yeah.
Kind of hold it all.
No, we look forward. I've been watching you the whole time, like, he's got good stuff to say.
I guess there's a couple of us.
Any other questions or comments from the council or
Nothing for me.
from there? Okay. Did I know I mentioned that we offered to donate that old mill structure and property to most of the nonprofits that have ever approached us and recently offered it to the city, but again, anybody that really examines this and does their due diligence realizes it's a hazard, it's a dangerous building, and rehabilitating it is just, you know, unless you're a governmental entity, a large governmental entity or a large nonprofit like the LDS Church, I mean, it's just, nobody's got the resources for that.
So Dennis, I do have a question. You brought up earlier that the cost to rehabilitate the old mill was $100 million.
Yeah.
Do you have that study you could share with us? Where that
Yes,
came from,
yes.
that number?
That's been, I've sent that to Mike.
Okay.
A week or so ago.
Oh,
As
okay.
a supplemental exhibit to the variance application.
Okay.
So it's available now and, you
So
know,
if you've said it, don't worry about it. We'll get it from Mike Johnson.
okay,
But and who did that come from?
that came from Brad Gilson, who did he paid really close attention to the feasibility and then said, even if we could figure out some way to rehabilitate it, the cost would be in excess of 100 million.
Okay.
It's a very difficult effort.
Well, yeah, we are gonna, thank you. We appreciate you coming in and doing this presentation for us. I think that is educational for the council. And we're gonna move on.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna do a quick review of calendars and upcoming events. So the Cottonwood Heights Arts Council
No, I still got.
play Beauty and the Beast is currently performing.
I got it.
And I've heard that it,
Oh, really? That
so
was-
I'm planning on Saturday,
Oh, they're supposed
but
to-
I've heard that it's one of the best that we've ever put on.
I went along.
Yeah, so I've heard it's one of the best that we've ever put on. So if you,
Yeah, so.
thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So anyway, we encourage everyone to go. Those include 7 p.m. performances and 2 p.m. matinees. And those are at Butler Middle School. Butlerville Days, like we've talked about, is next week, July 25th to the 27th at Butler Park. And then our Bark in the Park at Mountain View Park on August 24th from 9:30 to 11:30.
I just.
So we do not have a closed
They'll start off-
meeting today, we can discuss in a closed meeting. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session and our business meeting this summer.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? If you're opposed, you're going to.